about some other surveillance going on in the U.S. This is from The Guardian. Revealed LAPD used strategic communications firm to track defund the police online. And during the George Floyd protest and Black Lives Matter protests in the U.S., the LAPD contracted with Edge NPD. It's a Polish firm, and what they, I guess, do is somehow have access to all kinds of data and everything like that. And so I think it was 20 or so, 200 keywords actually that the LAPD asked Edge MPD to track down. And so, this is one of those things where if you want to support the narrative and everything, I understand. But just understand that, the police are looking into it. And so, if you're out there at a Black Lives Matter protest or something like that, and you're tweeting about Black Lives Matter, the police are looking at that information. Either maybe they're using it in an aggregate way. And, I know in the past that they've been able to work with companies who could also use like geo-tracking data and kind of combine them, say like, oh, everybody using the hashtag BLM or ACAB are in this particular location, tweeting from this area. That's, data that the police use for something. And just the police, I guess, having a company sift through and pick out the people who are calling to defund the police is rather disturbing and could lead to some pretty serious retribution. Doesn't seem like that's happening yet in America, that the police are using these companies to find people who tweeted out like F the police or something like that, and then they go and vandalize their car. Although I have seen cases of people at least posting online and claiming that, after they maybe posted a picture of a cop like in an idling car sleeping while he's supposed to be on duty, or like these people who will take a picture of like a cop with a brake light out or something like that, and they'll send a message to like their local police department and be like, hey, is it illegal to have a brake light out? Would you get pulled over for that? And they'll of course say yes, and then they post the picture of the cop with the brake light out. And I've seen reports of people saying that after that they felt targeted by police and were pulled over by police. But so like you can get targeted by police from something you post on social media, but I don't know if that's happening yet from this aggregate data. But something certainly seem to be concerned about. Also, calling for defunding the police and the police using taxpayer funds to spy on the taxpayer is a really disturbing irony. We have Boston police taking $600,000 it stole, I guess it claims, from like drug busts and stuff like that, and use that money to buy surveillance equipment without notifying the Boston government. And so I think they bought Stingrays with the money. And this is just another example of, cops running completely wild, but also, part of the reason why we should all be concerned with the police being able to and seizing a lot of money. We had the feds. This is interesting. I've been talking about on the show a little bit how the IRS has been seizing billions of dollars in crypto, particularly Bitcoin. But this from CNBC, the U.S. government has a massive secret stockpile of Bitcoin. Here's what happens to it. And over the years, the U.S. has sold, I think, 185,000 Bitcoins. Of course, nowhere near for the market value they should be sold at. And they auction them off, I think, at times. At one point, somebody bought 500 Bitcoins for around $5 million. That's now worth $23 million. Tim Draper bought 30,000 Bitcoins for 19 million in 2014. That's worth 1.3 trillion today, or billion today. And so we're talking about crazy numbers of the government just selling these Bitcoins. Real questions on like how you get signed up to get these Bitcoins, how the government decides to sell them. If you're going to auction them off in groups of 30,000 30,000 or something like that, I would imagine you get near the value that you would get if you just sold them off in small chunks of, one Bitcoin or just whatever somebody wanted. Like if the government just sells any Bitcoins it has for market value, whoever goes to the site first and, types in their information could buy however many they want, for however little they want. If some dude just wants $20 in Bitcoins, the government should just sell it to him for market value. If you have to have enough Bitcoins to buy $30,000 worth of Bitcoins at a time, well, that's going to really limit the market of the people who could potentially buy those Bitcoins. And I gotta say, I don't know enough about the Bitcoin market and how it's worked and how it's fluctuated over the years. But I'd be really interested in somebody who is a lot more familiar with the Bitcoin market being able to look into this and doing some analysis on when has the U.S. sold these Bitcoins? Who have they sold them to? What has been the impact? If the U.S. government dumps 30,000 Bitcoins on the market and under market value, what happens to the Bitcoin market when that happens? And how much is the U.S. government using this to tamper with the market? And of course, even if the U.S. is selling these things in a corrupt fashion, they're not getting nearly the value they should for them. They're still making billions and billions of dollars off of this. And so where are they getting these Bitcoins? And how do you get them back if the government wrongfully takes them is a major question. And also, where does this money go once it's taken? And it just seems like a real incentive to just let the government seize all the crypto they want. I think this has to be a real concern for people very much in the Bitcoin community. And I'm not saying you should stay away from Bitcoin because of this, but look, if the government really starts to sink its teeth into and just starts seizing all the Bitcoin it can, it's going to really screw up the Bitcoin market. And it could be a way for the government to make tens of billions of dollars too. Facebook says that 500 or 50,000 people, not 500, 50,000 people have been targeted on its platforms by SIT spyware companies. And I think most of these companies were, being used by state actors. And so this is NSO Group and Black Cube, two Israeli firms. There's also Bell Troll Ets, Israeli or Indian company, Blue Hawk CI, Crostats, and just all these other firms are six of them in total. So I think there's actually two more, and that have been used according to Facebook to attempt to surveil, hack, gain information on people through the Facebook network. So just be really careful on Facebook. It's not the safest community, and it's not as safe as people think. One story that I have talked a lot about on the show has not only been the death of Elijah McClain, but the widespread use of ketamine by American police and EMTs, and the idea that this is used on people who have excited delirium, which I'm skeptical is even an actual real medical condition and not just, people fearing for their lives from police officers. And once police identify somebody in a state of excited delirium, they will then have EMTs administer ketamine, and this is having some pretty serious consequences. It's very hard to find any actual information. It's getting a little bit more prevalent, but there's not a lot of information. Nationwide data, completely none. Most states, completely none, on how often EMTs are administering ketamine at behest of police, what the policies are of, who gets to make the assessment, whether it's the police officers or the EMTs, what happens if there's a disagreement, etc. But this recent study in Colorado looked at 902 cases over the past 2.5 years where EMTs administered ketamine and found that there were serious consequences in 17%, serious complications in 17% of the cases. And the American Society of Anesthesiologists recently stated It firmly opposes the use of ketamine or any other sedative hypnotic agent to chemically incapacitate someone for law enforcement purposes and not for legitimate medical reasons. I've personally had a anesthesiologist email me, and we discussed this through email, and saying that there's just no way that EMTs could responsibly administer this drug in this way on the side of the road, and that this is something that you would administer in a setting, in a hospital setting, and it could be done safely, but you had to be able to intubate. I think I'm saying that right. People, do the tube down the throat thing in case they stop breathing. And most EMTs aren't able to do that at a sufficiently capable rate. And that you end up with all these people suffering severe consequences. Now, this article does put out, and I've seen this before, people have argued with me back, even listeners of this show, that there is a study that was done that claims that of 11,000 people who were given ketamine, only 8 of them, which is 0.07%, died. And I think there are some questions to this, but also just because people aren't dying, it's not the absolute worst case. Doesn't mean there's not serious consequences. If you end up in the hospital for weeks because of this, that's also extremely serious and disturbing. And so, I'll continue to follow this, continue to report on this. I don't think it gets nearly enough attention, but there should be a lot more concern on who decides who gets ketamine on the side of the road. I want to follow up on the killing of Richard Lee Richards. He was the man accused of shoplifting from a Walmart, ending up at a Lowe's when police attacked him, and was a wheelchair-bound man shot in the back 9 times by Ryan Remington. Ryan Remington, Tucson, Arizona police officer, and Remington has been fired. No charges yet on Remington, though. Police are paying out big not police, but the city of Colorado is paying, the city of Chicago is paying out big because of its police force. And Janet Young was a social worker who came home from work. She's getting ready to shower or something, naked in her home. Police, on reading the apartment number wrong or something like that, kicked down the wrong door. They detain her in front of tons of other police officers for quite a period of time while she's completely naked. It must be beyond humiliating for her. Of course, she did nothing wrong. The police kicked down the wrong door. I don't think any of the police really face charges or anything like that for this. And of course, this is Chicago taxpayers that are paying. Not that the woman doesn't deserve the money, but as always on this show, disappointed doesn't come from the cops. Also, Chicago paying out $1.2 million to the family of Pedro Rios, who was walking down the street on July 4th, 2014, when a Chicago police officer drove past him and, what do you know, said waistband, and the kid ends up dead. We also have Jason, I think maybe Funke, Funke, who got $525,000 from the Las Vegas police, or the city of Las Vegas, but because the Las Vegas police shot him. Funke was having a mental health episode and had a gun, was threatening to commit suicide, put down the gun. For some reason, the police afterwards unleashed their dog on Funke. Once the dog was unleashed, he started running away. The way he was running was vaguely in the direction of the gun, and so police gunned him down several, I think like 20 or 30 feet away from his gun, just having an opportunity to shoot and taking it. Speaking of that, this story of Los Angeles is really disturbing. LAPD has released the body camera footage of this event, and this is just a overall mess of a situation. You have Daniel Elena Lopez, who I'm guessing is either in some kind of drug induced or mental health episode, swinging, I believe, like a bike lock on a chain around in a department store. You're watching the video. You can see one, blood on the ground, one woman laying on the ground, bleeding, from, it looks like her head. It may not bleed, but that's, what it looks like from the video. That's what the cops see. And police show up, and this one particular cop shows up with a rifle, and he's walking through the other police officers saying, I have the rifle, let me go first. I have the rifle, let me go first. That officer then gets to the point where he sees Lopez and is, I mean, Lopez is attacking someone at that time, and so the officer immediately fires his rifle at least 3 times. I think I heard 3 shots on there, and kills Lopez. Now, what I'm sure the officer didn't know at the time is that 14-year-old Valentina Orlena Peralta was in the dressing room behind Lopez, and one of those rounds went either off the floor, according to the police, or, through Lopez, and ended up killing Peralta, who I'm guessing was about to turn 15 because she was doing some dress shopping for her quinceañera. You can't imagine a worse thing happening for the family, right? To have, like, their daughter, who they're about to celebrate becoming a woman, end up getting gunned down when a bullet flies through a wall. Now, you have to really wonder, though, if she had to die. If one of the officers with the 9mm had fired, if maybe that bullet wouldn't have gone, through Lopez or bounced off the floor, and then carried enough momentum to go through the wall of the dressing room, and then, still have enough force to hit and kill the young 14-year-old girl. And so it's very disturbing to me. And also, if you watch the video of the cop who seems to be the one to take the shot with the rifle, I'm not sure if anybody else shot, he gets on the scene, grabs his rifle, and is walking at an extremely fast pace. He's like pushing his way to the front of the line of cops. I'm not sure why it would even possibly be Los Angeles police policy to, like, go after somebody with a rifle versus a handgun. Maybe there was some report that this guy was wearing body armor that I'm unaware of. Certainly not every last detail of this story is yet known. But, there's no reason to take this gun, especially since Lopez only appeared to have a melee weapon. And not that it, couldn't have potentially been a deadly weapon. Or, I'm not even arguing that the cops shouldn't have shot Lopez because of, he was, attacking somebody with deadly force. That this man was maybe not a monster all the time, but certainly was in this case, and a very deadly threat to other people. Not disputing that at all. The real issue here is that, it seems that G.I. Joe grabbed a rifle when it was unnecessary, rushed to the front of the line because he wanted to put somebody down when he thought he had an opportunity, and unfortunately, ends up killing a 14-year-old girl in the process. Now, again, I don't think he meant to kill the 14-year-old girl. I'm guessing that, maybe he's a guy that likes killing bad guys in his mind, or something like that. But, having the rifle and forcing your way to the front of the line, then firing a shot that goes through a wall, makes you responsible in some way. I've taken enough hunting safety classes and everything to know that it's on you to know what's behind what you're shooting at. It's not, you don't get some special rule or anything. And I know cops always get special rules with guns, but really shouldn't have one just because, a 14-year-old girl ended up dead. The other thing you have here too is this guy, they shot him at least twice with a rifle, right? Lopez, I'm talking about. And so he's laying on the ground dead, and all these cops are running up to him yelling, roll on your effing stomach and all this crazy stuff. And it's unbelievable of who these people are, that they just run around everybody swearing at everyone, effing this, effing that. You know, it just, you know, you shoot and kill somebody and then you're kicking them and trying to like tell them to roll over. They're dead. And of course, you know, this all adds to the amount of time that it takes to, you know, get these people help and everything like that. So when the cops do shoot the wrong person or do shoot somebody that really didn't need to die, they very often end up bleeding out because cops don't get them medical care fast enough, because all they're concerned about is rolling over a lifeless body and putting handcuffs behind it. All right, Cedric Lofton was a 17-year-old teen, apparently assaulted a cop a couple days before he ends up dead. He's in a juvenile facility. Again, this is a 17-year-old who gets in fights with cops and then juvenile facility staff within a couple of days. My guess is that he's going through some kind of mental health issue, potentially like a manic issue or something like that. He's just like got a bunch of testosterone going on and completely ramped up in the brain and fighting everybody. But after he's in the juvenile center, he ends up getting in a fight. According to the authorities, they could be completely untrue, but according to authorities, he then gets in a fight with the prison staff, and they put him on and they you know, restrain him and put him in the prone position, and then he ends up dead. Not exactly sure how that happened, but I want to start talking about this one because I'm going to try to keep up with it on the show. It has been ruled a homicide, and I'm, you know, really hoping that charges are pursued, because it does seem that excessive force was used against this young man that led to his death. And just like ketamine, putting people in a prone position while handcuffed is something that I've covered on the show in the past as being likely or more likely to lead to death. Of course, when you're a kid, right, and you get in a fight with the cop, you go to juvie, and, you know, and then you get in a fight with somebody and you get, you know, brutally beat by the guards. But when you're a cop, you only get 90 days for brutally raping a woman. This former Westminster police officer, I believe this was in Colorado, Curtis Lee Engbright, you know, if anybody wants to look his pictures up here on the website, so you may be kind of concerned if you live around this guy or something like that, picked up a woman who was apparently intoxicated at the St. Anthony's Hospital and began driving her, pulled off on the side of the road, and then forced her to engage in sexual acts with him. This is something that happens surprisingly a lot in the United States, that police officers have sex with women. They're either, you know, maybe not like detained or something like that, but for whatever reason, you know, have them in their car, and so have a real power imbalance with them, or actually detained. You know, there's this girl in New York who apparently gave oral sex to a couple of police officers after they arrested her, and they claimed it was consensual. They kidnapped the woman, and then they claimed that they had got a consensual blowjob from her. It's, you know, the most unbelievable thing. And if anybody else made the kind of arguments that cops make about, you know, well, I arrested this woman, but then we had consensual sex, that would be an additional reason to throw them in jail any longer, be further proof of their psychotic mindset. But rather, you know, it's a cop, and so they typically get sentences like this or none at all. He's only going to do 90 days in jail and then have 4 years of probation. It seems like a potential sexual predator and somebody people should watch out for, since he's not going to be in jail, even though, you know, he committed an actual dangerous crime and is the actual kind of person that should be in jail. Quick update here. The DC bar has restored the standing to good standing of a former FBI lawyer and the man who pled guilty to changing documents that he received from the CIA to make it appear that Carter Page was an asset of Russia when he was actually an asset of the CIA, in order to obtain a FISA warrant on Carter Page and thus be able to surveil the entire Trump administration. Or, excuse me, at that time, the Trump campaign. This was 2016. Unbelievable that they would let this guy back into the bar. You know, you would think, even if it is token people taking a fall for Russiagate and making up this entire lie, like Kevin Kleinsmith. It's not a major thing. He doesn't serve just, probation and stuff like that. But the fact that you restore him to a member of good standing of the bar, to allow him to continue to practice law after he's been shown to intentionally change documents to not only distort their meaning, but to flip their meaning in order to obtain a warrant in a secret court against the presidential campaign. If there's anybody you don't want involved in law, it's Kevin Kleinsmith. And not only does he not have to go to jail for what he did to the American people, but he, just gets back in the bar. Last thing I'll mention here is Biden has backed down negotiations to compensate separated migrant families. This is from the Trump family separation policy. And so I'm not, I guess I'm midst on, what who has a right to claim here. If you really didn't know you were going to be separated from your children when you were coming to the United States to seek asylum, then maybe you do have a claim. If you knew you were going to be separated from your children and did it anyways, it's a bad thing that the U.S. did from you. I don't approve of Trump's family separation policy. I opposed that at the time. I talked about what I thought were the likely consequences to the children at the time and how disturbing that was. But at the same time, do you have legal recourse from the American taxpayers because something bad happened from a decision that you made that you knew was going to be? I don't know. So I have mixed feelings about that, but it is interesting that, how little attention and criticism gets made to Biden's immigration policy from essentially anywhere other than like the far left, like a Truth Out is one of the only places that you could find critical reporting on Biden's immigration policy. And that's pretty disappointing. Anyways, that's where I'll wrap up today's show.